Okay, folks. Hey, thank you for watching the show. This is Art again with, let's be reasonable, folks. It's our job to be reasonable on making decisions about our political appetites. What's good for us, right? So, in the last episode, we talked about an article written in the Washington Post. Today, we're talking about an article written in the New York Times. And of course, it's entitled Examining Trump's Alternative Reality Pitch, and in the article written by Angelo Fashar, uh, it kind of goes through a litany of things that I guess you would say not a litany, but just three things in particular that Trump has been saying on the stump that cause people to say, how do you measure that, right? So he's talking about Ukraine, he's talking about Hamas attacking Israel, and of course about U.S. inflation. In all three cases, he's saying that if he were president, none of these items would have ever happened. And but there's no proof on the table that you can glean from even the last 4 years of his presidency, of the 4 years of his presidency, that you could say, yeah, if he had done that, that would have been different. So you can't really back up these claims. So what I'm going to do is just kind of touch on the claims, and we'll talk about, just from my point of view, what I see and how it may shed a little light on which direction things would have looked if Trump would have been elected. Okay, so into 2020, of course. Anyway, so if you look at it, his first claim is that I will have the horrible war between Russia and Ukraine settled before I even take office. Got to be settled. It never would have happened. And even Democrats admit that if Trump were president, Putin would have listened to me 100%. Okay, there is no evidence out there to support the fact that Putin would have listened to Trump 100%. Now, if Putin were listening to Donald Trump 100%, it would only further go to suggest that um, Putin likes to be praised. So does Donald Trump. He enjoys the praise and the accolade, especially of strong men or people that he denotes to be strong men. But if you recall, when it comes to Putin, think about Trump's trip to Helsinki and think about the deference he gave uh, Putin when the question was asked if the Russians had anything to do with getting Trump elected. His response, in a nutshell, was that, in essence, the words that Putin used was a strong denial that Russia had anything to do with it, and that he didn't believe his own security apparatus, the CIA, DIA, and the rest of it. So, all of that being said, that doesn't look like strength. It looks more like weakness. If you look at Trump's uh, calling off U.S. airstrikes on Iran over a downed drone. That again doesn't look like strength. It looks like weakness. Okay, I can rack up some wins for Trump when it comes to killing Soleimani in Iran and killing Baghdadi, right? But again, there's nothing really to suggest that a conversation that Trump would have with Putin would change the paradigm of the Russian Ukrainian war, right? So, uh, what do I think? Trump probably would capitulate, as one of the individuals in the article points out, Mr. Kupchin. He indicates that, yeah, encourage Ukraine. Trump would have encouraged Ukraine to capitulate to the Russian demands. So, you know, there's nothing there that looks like strength, right? It just looks like appeasement, and more appeasement that Trump would have, and deference that he definitely gives to Vladimir Putin. So, I mean, and there were other people who kind of echoed the fact that, and Juliet Carbo, all of these are assumptions, and it's kind of hard to make. Well, you can't really look into the future with any surety that any of these items would have been different if Donald Trump, or in the past, it would have been different if Donald Trump were president. Right. And I think the most damaging claim here was from uh, Mr. Bolton, who used to be Trump's defense, national defense advisor, I do believe. So Bolton said that again, he's speaking about the deference that Trump gave to Vladimir Putin, even though the information came out that Russia did have something to do with the 2016 election and sanctions were to come down. He said that Trump was highly agitated about sanctions. He said that the sanctions were the U.S. were being too tough on the Russians. So again, sounds more like appeasement than it does strength, right? So I'm not sure exactly. Anyway, that's just the one issue. The second issue was about what's going on in Hamas and Israel. And then the claim here says the horrifying attack on Israel would have never happened. It wouldn't have never happened if Trump were president. They wouldn't have even thought about doing such a thing if President Trump had been behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office. Look, I don't know if people recall the peace plan that was put on the table by Jared Kushner and Donald Trump and accepted by Benjamin Netanyahu. But remember that it had no input from Hamas nor the Palestinian Liberating Authority, right? So the PLO. So it's highly unlikely that he would have been able to convince Hamas that they needed to work with the Israelis, and it's highly unlikely that he would have been able to get Benjamin Netanyahu to want to work with Hamas. So again, you can point to just the facts around the case and say that again, probably more in the nature of appeasement that you see with Donald Trump in this particular case. Now, also remember this: in the Middle East, you have the Saudis and the president doing the old whatever it was, putting the head on the globe and doing the global dance or whatever the heck that they were doing. Nobody really, it's just some event, right? Um, but you do remember shortly thereafter, they killed the American journalist Jamal Khashoggi. They being the Saudis, right? So, and what was done? Absolutely nothing. So it's quite possible that it would have been different if Trump had been in office, but it is not the case that he would have been some strongman that would have represented U.S. interests from a standpoint of strength. Never would have happened. So, all right, so that's on to the last claim, which he's talking about U.S. inflation, and then that claim when you think of it, inflation would have never happened during a rally in Georgia this past month. That's what Trump is saying. Of course, inflation was already baked in. Look, anytime you spend $7.8 trillion, I mean, you're beyond stimulus, really. All right. But anytime you spend $7.8 trillion, I can guarantee you there was going to be some inflation. Just the case. And of course, that inflation was then exacerbated by the 3.2 or $3.4 trillion by the Biden administration. Okay. So inflation was going to happen. Why did we have to do that? Well, we had to do it because Trump was a little slow on the uptick when it comes to handling COVID. No one truly understood how to handle COVID. I'll say that in deference to, because it really wasn't Trump's fault. It was just kind of like the nature of the beast. It just happened that it showed up on his watch. Now, I don't believe he handled it all that gracefully or well, in the fact that he's telling people to drink bleach and you do other silly nonsense at these press conferences that he needed to be able to take credit for, right? So again, at the end of the day, I don't care if it was the issue of inflation. And by the way, when it comes to inflation, there are so many things that create inflation. Tariffs create inflation. They do. Um, Pay hikes, or in other words, when you increase the minimum wage or you increase wages for employees, that creates inflation too, especially in certain sectors where um you're producing finished goods. So it does increase. There's a number of different things that create inflation, and COVID, the dynamics surrounding COVID, only kind of ensured that there would be some inflation just based on how the United States was willing to attack it. So that being the case, folks, look, on all three of these issues, it's a pipe dream to think that it would have been different under Trump. Now, not that it wouldn't have been different, that it wouldn't have happened. I can tell you that it would have been different, but in most of those cases, I can point to the fact that it probably wouldn't have been a positive outcome. And there probably would have been plenty of times where he would have been willing to throw someone under the bus in order for it not to fall into, you know, him or fall on him that he is the person that made the bad decision. So, overall, great article to read. Recommended to everybody take a look at it. But hey, at the end of the day, folks, like and subscribe, and of course, leave me your comments on the other side. Hey, I'm just being reasonable.